the Mint Door Podcast with Dr. Karen Tyndall and Dr. Laura Schwint.
Are you a high achiever feeling the burnout blues? The Mint Door Podcast is your oasis. Before we introduce you to today's phenomenal guest, we're extending an invitation to something extraordinary. We're mixing up the perfect antidote to burnout with our Mint Julep newsletter, a weekly dose of inspiration delivered straight to your inbox.
Each edition of the Mint Julep is more than just words on a page. It delivers connection, brimming with inspiration, positivity, and a dash of fun. Think of it as your virtual happy hour with a supportive community of high achievers. We'll help you unwind, recharge, and rediscover the joy in every day.
So we're inviting you to subscribe to the Mint Julep and let's clink glasses or maybe coffee mugs to live a more inspired, joyful life 1 week at a time.
And don't forget, if you are more of a visual learner, we've got you covered. All of our podcasts plus bite-sized coaching tips are on our YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/@themintdoor. Subscribe for happiness on the go.
So now to our main event. Welcome back to the Mint Door Podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have the trailblazing Katy Leiviska joining us. As a dental therapist with over a decade of experience, Katy has been at the forefront of expanding access to affordable dental care.
Yeah, get ready to be inspired because in this episode, Katy will share her journey, the challenges she's overcome, and the incredible impact she's made on countless patients. Tune in to learn more about the vital role of dental therapists and how they're revolutionizing the way we think about oral health care, and why she hopes to continue to blaze the trail for dental therapy across this great country, ultimately increasing access to people and centered care for millions. We can't wait to get in, so we'll see you soon in the Mint Door Podcast. Well, hello again, Mint Door listeners. We are back with another episode of the Mint Door Podcast, and we are pleased to bring you today Katy Leiviska. Katy, thanks for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to talk more about dental therapies.
I know, we are too.
Yeah, I think you're our first dental therapist on the Mint Door Podcast, so you're always going to have that title. Now, we'd love it if you could share with us and our audience a bit about how your role as a dental therapist has contributed to increasing access to high quality, patient-centered dental care.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not unusual now that I'm the first, to be part of like some boards or some meetings or just in different states because it's new to America, but it's not new in the world. Dental therapy has been around for over, a century in other countries. I have a whole presentation about it if anyone would like more information about the history of it. But dental therapy in itself, it's nothing new, in a sense that it's already a really well integrated medical model of having kind of like this mid-level care provider to help increase access to care. And so especially in dentistry, within the next few years, and as we're seeing now, there's not enough dentists to see the general population, much less this high amount, especially in Minnesota, where I currently practice, a large amount of like immigrant population, a lot of state-based insurance, and we have state-based insurance for adult and for children. Very, very fortunate because I know a lot of states only have state-based insurance for children, leaving adults, not a lot of options and places to go. And so by incorporating a dental therapist, and we have a much smaller scope of practice than the dentist does, it enables you to essentially pay me a lot less to still give high quality care because I'm trained to the exact same degree as a dentist is. I went to the University of Minnesota Dental School, and I sat next to the dental students. I took the exact same classes as the dental students. I took the exact same patient board as the dental students with a blind proctor. So they didn't know if they were grading a dental therapist or a dental student, and was graded to the exact same degree. So when I graduated, was taught the exact same thing. So you just hire me. So, and we're mandated in Minnesota. So 50% of my patients have to be HMO, MA. We have to work in a designated underserved area as determined by the Minnesota Department of Health. So we were created to serve this population. That's actually in our scope of practice in Minnesota. So I essentially do fillings all day, and I work a lot with children. And so by having that smaller scope of practice, it enables the dentist to then practice at a higher scope of their practice. And so they can see more of the extractions, more of the crowns, more of the root canals, more of the dentures, more of like the high-end dentistry, because I'm able to take care of that day in and day out, more traditional things like the fillings, and seeing a lot of the children, just increasing, again, you can see more patients that way. So just all around, again, just kind of like it as a medical with the nurse practitioners and the physician's assistants. So now dentistry is just seen an incorporation of that type of provider. So in a nutshell.
That's a really good comparison. So for people to understand the role, like everybody is familiar with a physician's assistant.
Yeah.
It's basically the same sort of thing. And so many people are super happy to go and see their physicians. I would rather see mine than the actual doctor. Could you share a little bit about, from your point of view, what unique perspectives and skills do dental therapists bring to a dental office?
I think in that you have someone that just focuses on doing restorative, like a lot of fillings and working, especially heavy in pediatrics. That's all I do. So I get to tell patients, like, I do this and I do this really well. So if you need a lot of fillings, if you need this, great, come and see me. And because you're incorporating another provider, I mean, I was brought into offices because they were 3 or 4 months booked out just for fillings, because there was one dentist having to see this entire, patient population. They had dentists moving around. And so they're like, well, let's bring in Katy 1 day a week. So they brought me in 1 day a week for 2 months, and I was able to bring them down from a 13-week operative, like being pushed out to 2.
Wow.
So just for patients to get in for fillings, because if you have essentially like a really big cavity, you really can't wait, 13, 14 weeks. And that's not the clinic's fault or the dentist's fault or anybody else's fault. It's just you need another provider to help with something that common. So in that way, I really get to specialize in one area. And also it's been so heavy on hygiene, the prevention, the education part of dentistry, to really help with patients. And a lot of times you have to hear something 30 times, before it's going to get stuck in your head. And I think a lot of people, anyone listening to this that works with patients a lot, no matter how many times you tell them, like, it takes a while to set in. So having another provider, because a lot of my education was heavy with the hygiene students also in the prevention education part of it, that I get to be another provider to be like, hey, don't rinse the toothpaste off your teeth, leave it on. And you get the space like, what? Like, yes, we were raised to rinse and spit. Like, don't do that. And here's why. And then you get to go through cavity process. And then I work with a lot of undocumented individuals and, people that are new to this country, or those on state-based insurance. And it's just like, do you have any kids? Bring your kids in. When are they supposed to go to the dentist? Around the age of 1 or 6 months after your first toothbrush. Really? I have like a 4-year-old that's never been in. Great. Bring him in. And then you can just break this cycle of just tooth decay and everything else that we're seeing, because it's the highest, disease among children, preventable among children. So helping with the prevention education part of it, getting a provider that really specializes kind of in a few areas to do really well at that. Because if you don't need the big guns, if you don't need the dentist, then you don't have to see the dentist. But if you do, they'll hopefully be more available because they have another provider to help, with a lot of the day in and day out dentistry.
As you're describing how you specialize in the fillings and how your day goes in combination with the dentists and the hygienists, it occurs to me that you're also really easing up the dentist's day to day. Because I think of when you're doing restorative, there's not a lot of good time to stop and take a break.
Sure.
And as a dentist, when you're doing a restorative appointment and your hygienist comes and says, I have an exam,
right,
that is a big challenge.
It is. And well, we can get into kind of dental therapy, can get kind of confusing, that I am an advanced dental therapist. So I'm certified, as an advanced dental therapist, this might work differently in different states, as dental therapy has only been around in America for about 12 years. So as a certified advanced dental therapist, I can work without a dentist in clinic. Now, every dental therapist has to have a collaborative management agreement signed with the dentist, any dentist that they work with every year. They have to go through the scope of practice. The dentist can limit the scope of practice of a dental therapist as much as they want and is agreed upon. So in that, once you become a certified advanced dental therapist, I can do certain exams. So I can help with limited exams, I can help with periodic exams, and I can do 3-year-old and under exams. And that can also help with a lot of the workflow of a clinic too. I can't do comprehensive exams. That's fully on the dentist. The dentist physically has to be there and touch the patient and do this. So I have to constantly collaborate with the dentist, but it's also with the limited exams. It happens multiple times a week. I have the patients just like, oh, a filling fell out. And they come in just like, when did the filling fall out? Oh, like 4 years ago. You know, at this point, there's not a lot that I can do to help you, because originally they're like, oh, this would be perfect for a dental therapist. But then we're looking at it and be like, there's really nothing we can do except take the tooth out. So, you know, I look to see who's available potentially, and I go talk to them. We look at the x-ray together. I get the patient numb. Everything's all set up, the consent and everything else. The dentist is able to walk in. I introduce them. They introduce themselves to the patient. They get it done, and then they're able to go on with their day. So, and then we're able to add more hygienists because you have another provider that's able to help out with the periodic exams. And then we've actually added several registered dental assistant columns that help with our pediatric patients, because the dental therapists are able to help with a lot of those exams. So we've increased our pediatric population and then our general patient, because as a certified advanced dental therapist, you can help with that too. But yes, helping with the dentist schedule too, because I feel like they have to have rollerblades on half the time because they're running multiple columns. So, but I mean, at one of the clinics I was at, if a dentist was on maternity leave or they called in sick and they were the only ones running the clinic, it was either shut down the clinic or have another provider come in. And my schedule was so much more easier to kind of manipulate and play around with, that they'd say like, hey, can you go to this clinic on these days or for these weeks? And then I would run, you know, my operative column. We'd have a walk-in column, and then we would have, you know, 2 to 4 hygiene columns too. So in that way, like, you still are able to help with that patient flow and clinic flow too. So
Wow.
It helps everybody.
I mean, my mind right now is just like, wow, just amazing at all the applications that could really impact access to care, flow of care, fulfillment, enjoyment at work, all of those things. So wow, thanks for sharing all of that insight there. I'm curious because you said, you know, a big piece and maybe a passion of yours is the educational piece of it. Tell me how your role as a dental therapist facilitates supporting patients to really take control of their own dental health.
Well, I like to talk. I think it's very important, you know, in this professional occupation. And again, the hygienist starts so much of that conversation. So then to be on the same page with them and continue that conversation, be, you know, and reading the notes, be like, hey, I saw that this hygienist talked to you about the need, you know, for scaling and root planing. Did you have any questions about that, or what that might entail, or why that's going to be important? And then, like I said, a lot with the kids and stuff, just, you know, holding up the mirror again and being like, so I know we talked about this last time, but you see this thick layer of orange stuff on your teeth, like that's bacteria pooping in your mouth. That's gonna cause this and this and this issue, and just giving them that. I always love the phrase with teenagers, especially. I'll do the one where it's just like flossing. It's kind of like wiping your butt. If you don't go up the crack, is your butt really clean? And it puts this visual in their mind, and some of them laugh about it, but it's kind of just like, that's disgusting, right? Like, so maybe next time they won't hide the floss in the drawer. Like, it's like, just do it in the shower. I don't care. Just at some point. So just kind of bringing some of that levity to it. But, and again, because my scope of practice is not as heavy, because I think I have this one document that says like I have 80 billable procedures, a dentist has 600. So in that, I have more one-on-one time with the patients. So taking advantage of that as a provider that doesn't have such a big bulky scope of practice, I can do so much. So I have more time to talk to the patients. That's one of the things I love most about this job. I get asked all the time, like, why don't you just go back to dental school? Why don't you become a dentist? Like, I don't want to. I have no desire to do that. I really like what I do. And that is one of my favorite parts of this job, is to do that prevention education part of it, especially, you know, when I don't like pulling out teeth on 2-year-olds. I don't. It's not fun. I would love that cycle to stop. I would love to move towards, you know, SDF every day. Not every day, but so it's in that way, the prevention education part of it is just, it's again, for me, just trying to break that cycle, bringing more families like together and just being like, this is fully preventable. Like, here's what we need to do. A lot of parents don't know they can't put their kids to sleep with a bottle at night and what that's going to do to their teeth. So it's just, and it's no one's fault or blame, but it's just educating them on that point. So then when I see them 3 months later for that checkup to see how it's improved, it's great, because they're just like, yeah, I'm brushing their teeth. They scream. I'm like, yep, I had to hold my daughter down till she was 4.5, but you know what? Her teeth got cleaned and she's fine. So I like that part of it the most, I'd say. But because I have a smaller scope of practice, I'm able to do that more.
That's beautiful. And I love how you follow up with, you know, like you said, just sometimes it just takes more than one time to hear something, or more than, and you never know what state a person is in that first hygiene appointment. So maybe when they get to you, they're in a more relaxed state because they've been to the practice before. They know how it, you know, and they're more than able to take in that information that you then again have the time and obviously the passion to talk about.
Well, and we've all been there. Like, you get to that appointment and there's a lot of information, whether it's medical or dental, especially at dentist, because you'll see us once or twice a year. And then it's just like, hey, you need this and this and this. Does any questions? And it's like, no, like for every patient leaves, it's just like, okay, I see you have this and this. I mean, it's just continue, because I mean, it's happened to me. I just had a call on my way home from work on the way here today because I had to reset up because I had different appointments with, you know, how many kids, and I get it. It's confusing. So just retouching base, I think for everybody is helpful. But
that's cool. Well, your enthusiasm for dental therapy is infectious. And what do you see coming in the future? Like, what's the potential for dental therapists, or maybe what would you want the potential to be?
Well, when dental therapy first started in Minnesota, there was a very big uproar. People were not super happy about it. It actually started in Alaska first, 5 years before it started in Minnesota, and they had a program. So they're called DHATs, dental health aid therapists. Great. They go out and work in tribal populations, communities that are only accessible by like plane or boat once a year. They have a much bigger scope of practice because their access to care issue is different than what we have in Minnesota. But originally that's what everyone compared it to. And it was like, time out, like, that's not Minnesota's issue. This is how it's going to be addressed here. But that's all everybody saw right away. And so, I mean, I did my undergrad at the University of Minnesota, and I was looking at what I wanted to do, and I was getting into dentistry, but I didn't know if I wanted to go for the DDS or the hygiene. And my undergrad advisor emailed me. She's like, you got to look at this. It's coming through legislation. I think it'd be a really good fit for you. And so they had this huge meeting at the University of Minnesota in one of their huge, you know, classrooms. And I mean, it was packed wall to wall. There's people standing at the door. People were standing up saying, if you bring this here, I'm leaving. I mean, just, and they did. They had professors and students, like, you know, leave the program because they actually started this. So, I mean, there was just a lot of misunderstanding and controversy when it first came about, even though it's really nothing new. I'm not doing anything new, and it's already been done for a really long time, but change in any field or anywhere is going to be scary for some people. But in dentistry, the last major change was hygiene, and that was well over a century ago. And it was the same thing. I don't want them. I don't need them. I'm not going to use them. Now, good luck finding a practice that doesn't use a hygienist. Same thing when PAs first came out. Didn't know how to use them, didn't know how to establish them, and their scope of practice has changed a lot, you know, since they first came out to, you know, decades ago. And so in dentistry, it's still kind of behind the times in changing, and people are still really afraid of that change. And Minnesota now, it's established, it's ingrained. We're here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Study after study has come out showing that we are doing what we're made to do, and we're really effective at what we're doing. There's been no complaints made to the Minnesota Board of Dentistry yet about any practicing dental therapists that I'm aware of. So it's safe. And we're in 14 states now. Wisconsin just joined this year, which was super exciting, but I believe they went through like 6 legislative processes just to get the bill passed. So there's still a lot of misinformation. Like I traveled to Florida to speak years ago with them, and within the first like 10 minutes, I was hearing they're killing people, they're doing general anesthesia, like we don't want this here. Like, what is happening? Like, no, can't do general anesthesia. Like, we haven't killed it. Like, stop. I mean, it's just this mad game of telephone about what's going on. And so just breaking it down and keeping it simple and having a dental therapist go and speak and just be like, I'm not scary. I'm really nice. I swear, I promise. And I am really good at my job. So ideally, just to do our jobs right and to do them well and to have that continue to spread, just to increase access to care across the country, because every state is going to have a need for a dental therapist. Is every clinic? No, absolutely not. But if it passes in your state and you could use a dental therapist, then let it pass in your state. If you don't want one or need one, then don't hire one. But don't disallow it from passing in your state due to fear of change. So that's my kind of hope. I'm hoping over the next few years to find dental schools in states that don't have dental therapy where it's just starting, and try to start from the students and work up that way. So when they graduate, they're already aware of what dental therapy is and how it could be potentially utilized. So if they go and open their own practice or go to another state, they'd be like, yeah, I know what dental therapy is. I know how to utilize them, or how best like we could incorporate that into a practice. So I'm hoping to do that over the next few years, because I have presentations, why not use them in dental public health groups or the dental school itself. Like, just give me an hour, and a lot of those questions and misunderstandings could be answered. So just to have it spread across the country and help increase access to care, that's my hope.
Oh. I love your enthusiasm for it, and I love how you so eloquently and simply really enlighten us to the possibilities, and not just for a practice, but the possibilities for the people that we serve.
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants to be told that they have a ginormous cavity and then be told that they have to wait 3 months to get it filled.
Right. Yeah.
So, I just think that's beautiful. So I'm curious, you said when you went through school and you were alongside the hygienists and the dentists going to school, how were you guys all as colleagues doing that? Was everyone supportive at that point?
Well, I was the first class that graduated in Minnesota back in 2011. So we were definitely the guinea pigs. There was only 9 of us, which is the largest class of dental therapists at the University of Minnesota ever graduated. So they didn't want to take away seats from the dental students, very understandably. We need more dentists. We need a ton more dentists. And they didn't want to take away seats from the hygiene students either, and they only have. So they had to build in like 10 chairs just in the clinic to bring in dental therapy. But then it kind of worked out. There were so many like different color groups in the school where you see patients, and it was best just to have one dental therapist per group, because you don't want to be taking patients from each other. So now each class has about 7 or 8 max. At the University of Minnesota, the Mankato program just opened. They have room for 12. So we're hoping to get even more dental therapists graduated in Minnesota. The board keeps asking. It's just trying to find a way to do that. So, I mean, in school, it was more just among the students. I mean, there wasn't a lot of animosity or issues that way. It was more so just, there was nothing to go off of, when before they went through the legislative process, they did have certain providers and people go and look at the dental therapy programs in other places and countries in the world, just to see how it functioned there before they brought it here. So at least they had like kind of an understanding, but it was definitely a kind of figure it out as you go along. But the groundwork was already there. We already knew what our scope of practice was. So it was just figuring out what courses we needed to take. And I remember before we graduated, it was like, oh, you guys can extract teeth. You can extract baby teeth. Like, we need to teach you how to do that. It's like, yeah, that would be great. And so we had they had to take our lunch hour away for a while because that was the only time we could really fit it in for graduation, because we had to make sure we were confident enough, in the skill to do that. And like before you practice on patients, obviously. So that first year, I mean, what's interesting is obviously it's changed greatly since I graduated. When I graduated, it was a bachelor or a master's track. Now what I am doesn't exist anymore. So I'm just an advanced dental therapist. Everyone that graduates in Minnesota now is going to be duly licensed as a dental hygienist and a dental therapist.
Oh.
So, and that's how most states are going.
Okay.
They want their hygienists to go into a program that will then allow them to get their dental therapy. I'm hoping masters. I'm hoping most state goes for masters. That would be, I feel, the best long term. And then after you graduate as a dental therapist, and again, duly licensed as a hygienist, you work for 2,000 hours. This is in the state of Minnesota. And then after you work for 2,000 hours, which is roughly about a year full time, you have to take a board course. Then, or sorry, not a course. You have to take a examination. You have to interview with the Minnesota Board of Dentistry, and then you have to create like a patient portfolio of so many cases that you have to present to the board, and so you have to pass all these things, and then you can get certified as an advanced dental therapist. So I think a lot of states are following in that way too, because it has enabled a lot of dental therapists in the state of Minnesota to travel around the state of Minnesota. So there's this misconception that all the dental therapists are working in the cities in Minnesota, like we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing and working in rural Minnesota. To be correct, about 60% of us are working in the cities and 40% of us are working outside in the rural Minnesota, because Minnesota's huge. But that is how the state-based insurance, the MA population in Minnesota is distributed. About 60% of the patients live in the cities and about 40% of them live in rural Minnesota. But also, it doesn't take into account that a lot of our dental therapists are mobile. So they go to schools, they'll set up in a corner of a gymnasium for a week and see patients, and then they'll travel down to like Albert Lea, South Minnesota, and they'll travel up to northern Minnesota. And then some of them work actually in with geriatric patients, and they go to different homes. So I mean, it's, even though they're stationed in the cities, they travel around Minnesota, especially in communities. We have some up in like Cook County, which is like that little point, in Minnesota that everyone's visualizing right now. So we're very well spread out, but they're still, because of the advanced certification, they're able to do that because dentists can't be everywhere. And though they try, I mean, it's just, they can barely handle the general population. The national dental shortage of dentists is going to be a huge problem in the next 5 years. So, and it already is. There's not enough of them. We need more of you.
Oh, so what would you tell someone listening that's like, ooh, this sounds interesting? What would you tell someone that is thinking that dental therapy would be a career path for them?
I love the University of Minnesota's program. I'm obviously a little biased, but it's great. It's 3 years, and you get your master's and your bachelor's in 3 years. And then I think it's like 70 to 80,000, which for a master's is like not bad in this day and age at all. And it's a master's, so if you want to go and teach with it, if you want to like have board seats, there's a lot you can do with it. I have a friend that went on and got her doctorate in like a public health program by using her master's in dental therapy. So it's a master's, there's a lot you can do with it. You get it in 3 years. It's really, really, cost effective, and you can more than pay off your student loans and what we make in Minnesota. And it's just, and you don't have to have a degree to get into the program. So, and similar, I mean, technically dental students don't either. It's rare, probably maybe 1 or 2 a year don't, but there's just a list of 10 like undergraduate courses that you had to have completed. And the University of Minnesota's website, it's laid out really, really well. But it's great because, I mean, it's a lot cheaper than going into the dental school. And I love that I've had 4 kids since I graduated. So it's very family friendly in terms of like a career, if that's something that you're looking for. I go to work and I come home. I don't even have access to work at home. It's just, I really like it in that way too. So if anyone's kind of looking for, and it's in the medical field, it's obviously a medical career, but we don't work holidays and we don't work weekends, and so the hours are really nice in that way. So that's a huge, but in terms of, and I mean, it's just, I think there's like 12 open positions in the state of Minnesota alone. Like, we don't have enough dental therapists. And then Wisconsin, I believe, is starting a program fall of 2025. So there's another state, so more schools hopefully will be starting, within the next 3 years. They're figuring out the state licensure. A Minnesota dental therapist that graduated, obviously in Minnesota, is now practicing in Maine. So they're figuring out how to do that. Now that we've been around for over a decade, I believe, like, we're working with the National Guard now to take recruits from their program into dental therapy. So it's just, we're going, like, it's rolling. It's going to be a huge career to take advantage of this early on. Mm-hmm. But I don't know about other states, but like, I mean, there's a shortage of assistants, there's a shortage of hygienists right now, like dentistry in general. Mm-hmm. They're looking at going into a field. But my biggest piece of advice would be to shadow. Please shadow. If you have any interest in any field at all, find someone that does it and go watch them for at least half a day. Mm-hmm. Because you might be surprised what you really, really like or really don't like. Mm-hmm. If you go in there, you're just like, I'm going to faint at the sight of blood or pus. Not a great field for you to go into. But so yes, shadow, take advantage of that. So, but that's, if anyone's looking into it, they'll have my email. I can answer any questions and help them that way too. So I have a student to shadow me next week.
Yeah, I think, and don't the programs now, I mean, don't a lot of programs encourage, if not require, a certain amount of shadowing before you even get in?
Yes, which is smart, because I mean, you don't want to invest your time and money into something that you're going to end up hating. If you don't like working with patients and people, do not go into this career. Research. I mean, that happened when we were in dental school. Like, after a year and a half, so many people dropped out because they're like, when we started working with patients, they realized they did not like working with people or having to deal with a lot of the emotions and complications that come with working in someone's mouth. And it's not just their mouth, it's their whole body. And there's just so much more that goes into that. And people don't like us. I mean, I don't like going and getting the filling done more than anybody else does. There's just a lot that goes into that too. So, but yeah, so yes, to your point, it is actually a requirement for dental therapy school now too, which I fought for a long time. So yes.
Fantastic. Well, this has just really opened my eyes. How about you, Karen?
Yeah, definitely. I just feel it's something that more people need to know about. Not only in dentistry, but in terms of the population, that if you are offered the option of going to see a dental therapist, take it. Because, your description of the fact that you're doing what you do day in, day out, all the time, to the same standards as what a dental student would have to have passed, but I've got somebody who does it all the time, it seems like a no-brainer. Yeah. So I'm on board with team dental therapy.
I am too. Awesome. All right. So you mentioned the Minnesota website, and we'll make sure and put that link in the show notes as well. But you have also graciously said that you would take emails from anybody that if they had questions or wanted to set up an appointment with you to discuss this. So we'll make sure and get your email in the show notes as well.
Yeah. And if I don't know the answers, I will help find somebody that does. Yes. 100%.
Well, thank you. This has been, again, eye-opening, and I just feel inspired by the possibility, and I can't wait to see how far you take dental therapy in the world, because I know, number one, you are uber passionate, but you have a heart of gold too. So you put those two things together and magic's got to happen.
Yeah, and it's fun. And thank you both for coming up to me at the Star of the North, the dental therapy booth, and introducing yourselves and telling me more about your program. And again, I'm hoping to lock you down for our conference next year too, to maybe come as some speakers. So, and thank you for what you do and for being supporters and helping to spread the word correctly, about dental therapy. We really appreciate it. Could use all the help. So.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That's sweet. Listeners, reach out to Katy. Like she said, she has presentations. She's vastly knowledgeable and extremely passionate. So super kind. I think you'll enjoy getting to know her. So we'll make sure we have her contact information below. But thank you so much, Katy. We adore you. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. And listeners, we hope you found some encouragement. We'll see you on the next episode of the Mint Door Podcast. Bye. Thanks for listening, and subscribe for more holistic performance content.